Hello, Life Single family. Welcome back to another heartfelt story from our Vietnamese drama series. Have you ever experienced the pain of being forgotten by someone you love deeply? Have you watched a grandparent's eyes fill with tears when their grandchild doesn't recognize them? What would you sacrifice just to hear a child call you Grandpa? One more time? Today's episode explores one of the most heartbreaking consequences of family separation. When a grandfather becomes a stranger to his own flesh and blood. After 2 years away, Maya's paternal grandfather returns with arms full of gifts and a heart full of longing. But the innocent question, "Who are you?" shatters his world completely. This is a story about unconditional love, painful distance, and the desperate hope that blood ties can overcome even the deepest estrangement. It's a story that will make you hold your loved ones a little tighter tonight. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe to Life Single Review and hit that notification bell. Now, let's witness a grandfather's journey from hope to heartbreak to healing. The morning sun barely broke through the windows when Maya's grandfather woke up. He had barely slept, his mind racing with anticipation and anxiety about today's visit. 2 years, 730 days since he last held his granddaughter. How much had she grown? Did she remember him at all? He moved quietly through the house, not wanting to wake his wife yet. In the kitchen, he carefully packed a large bag with everything he thought a little girl might love. Boxes of imported cookies, colorful candies, chocolate bars, fresh milk, and a stuffed rabbit. He'd chosen after wandering through 3 different stores, each item selected with trembling hands and a grandfather's desperate love. His wife appeared in the doorway, watching him fuss over the arrangement of gifts. "You're going to spoil her," she said softly. But her eyes were sad. She knew what he was feeling, the gnawing uncertainty of whether their granddaughter would even recognize them anymore. "She's our blood," he replied firmly, though his voice cracked slightly. "No matter what happened between Huyen and Thuk, Maya is still our granddaughter. Nothing can change that." But doubt crept in as he zipped the bag closed. What if Huyen had poisoned Maya's mind against them? What if his granddaughter had been taught to hate the family that once rejected her mother? The thought made his hands shake as he lifted the heavy bag. The bus ride felt eternal. He sat clutching the gift bag on his lap, staring out the window without really seeing the passing landscape. His mind wandered to memories, holding tiny Maya in the hospital, her first steps toward him with arms outstretched, the way she used to call him Ang Noi, in her sweet baby voice. Did she remember any of it? Other passengers got on and off, but he barely noticed. An elderly woman across from him smiled at his bag of gifts. "Someone's grandchild is very lucky today," she commented kindly. He managed a weak smile but said nothing. Lucky? He wasn't so sure. What if he arrived only to be met with blank stares and rejection? What if 2 years had erased him completely from her young memory? As the bus neared Huyen's neighborhood, his heart began to pound. He rehearsed what he might say. Should he introduce himself formally? Should he wait for Huyen to explain who he was? The uncertainty was torture. He remembered watching other grandfathers at the park before he left. Old men being tackled with hugs by squealing grandchildren, tiny arms wrapped tight around weathered necks, sticky kisses planted on wrinkled cheeks. He wanted that so desperately. He wanted Maya to run to him, to bury her face in his shirt, to let him kiss her forehead and tell her how much he'd missed her. But what if she didn't? What if she looked at him like a stranger? What if she feared him, avoided him, rejected his gifts and his love? The bus stopped. His legs felt heavy as he stood, the gift bag seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds now. Each step toward Huyen's house was a battle between hope and dread. He could hear children's laughter in the distance. Was one of those voices Maya's? He paused outside the gate, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened today, he had to try. She was his granddaughter, his flesh and blood, and he would prove his love, even if it took 1,000 visits. The moment he saw her, time stopped. There was Maya, playing in the yard with another little girl, her hair longer now, her face more defined, but still unmistakably his granddaughter. She looked so much like Thuk at that age. The same eyes, the same smile. His heart swelled with such fierce love it physically hurt. He wanted to call out to her, to run to her, to scoop her up in his arms. But something held him back, the terrifying possibility that she wouldn't know him. Maya noticed him first. She stopped playing and stared at this strange man standing near her house. Her expression wasn't recognition or joy. It was curiosity mixed with caution, the look a child gives to any unfamiliar adult. "Who are you, sir?" she asked politely, staying close to her playmate. Those 4 simple words shattered his heart into 1,000,000 pieces. Who are you? Not Grandpa, not a squeal of delight and a running embrace, just the polite wariness of a well-mannered child addressing a stranger. He felt his throat constrict. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. How could he answer? How could he say, "I'm your grandfather," when clearly, to her, he was nobody? When the title meant nothing to this child, who should have known him as well as she knew her own mother. The pain was indescribable. He imagined other grandfathers at this very moment, being greeted with hugs and kisses, hearing delighted shouts of "Grandpa's here!" He imagined Maya running to them instead of him, showering them with the affection that should have been his. Why not him? What had he done to deserve this exile from his own grandchild's heart? When Huyen appeared and explained who he was, Maya's expression didn't change much. She accepted the information like one might accept being told a stranger's name, with polite acknowledgement, but no emotional connection. He was just another adult in her life now, not the beloved grandfather who should have been part of her daily world. He tried to hide his devastation behind a smile. He offered the gifts with hands that trembled. "Grandpa brought you some presents," he said, hating how formal and stiff he sounded. He wanted to sound warm, loving, familiar. But how could he when she looked at him with such distance? Maya accepted the gifts politely. "Thank you, Grandpa," she said. But it was recited, learned manners rather than genuine affection. She didn't throw her arms around him. She didn't examine the gifts with excited gratitude. She simply held them and waited to be told what to do next. He watched as Huyen encouraged Maya to let him hold her. The child came reluctantly, stiff in his arms, enduring rather than enjoying the embrace. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Grandchildren were supposed to melt into their grandparents' arms, to feel safe and loved and cherished. Maya felt like a little statue, waiting for the uncomfortable moment to pass. When he tried to engage her, offering to take her to buy candy, to take her on outings, she refused. Every no was another knife in his chest. "I only want to go with Mommy Huyen," she kept saying, drawing a clear line between the parent she trusted and this stranger claiming to be family. He understood. Of course she trusted Huyen. Huyen had been there every single day. Huyen had earned that trust and love through countless moments of care and presence. What had he done? He'd been absent. He'd chosen work over relationship. He'd let pride and anger over the divorce keep him away. But even in his heartbreak, he refused to give up. This was his granddaughter, his blood, his legacy. If it took 100 visits for her to warm to him, he would make them. If it took 1,000 small gestures to earn her trust, he would make them all. He watched her carefully as she drank the milk he'd brought. She was a beautiful child, smart, articulate, well cared for. Huyền had done an excellent job raising her, he had to admit, even if the acknowledgement came reluctantly. Maya was healthy, happy, confident. She knew how to speak to adults, how to play nicely with friends, how to express her preferences clearly. In another life, another circumstance, he might have been proud to tell Huyen what a good mother she was, but pride and past wounds kept those words locked inside. As the visit continued, he noticed small changes. Maya's body language slowly relaxed. She stopped watching him with quite so much caution. When he held her, she didn't pull away as quickly. When he spoke, she actually listened instead of just waiting for the conversation to end. These tiny victories felt monumental. The first time she voluntarily reached for the milk he offered, his heart leaped. When she said, "Thank you, Grandpa," without being prompted, he had to blink back tears. When she let him hold her without Huyen forcing the interaction, he felt a crack in the wall between them. He began to see the visits not as a single event, but as a beginning. This wasn't the triumphant reunion he'd hoped for, but it was something. It was a foundation on which to build. Maya didn't love him yet, didn't rush to him with open arms, but she no longer looked at him with complete blankness either. He thought about all the grandfathers he'd envied over the years, the ones whose grandchildren climbed on them like jungle gyms, the ones who got sticky kisses and handmade cards, the ones who were grandpa in every sense of the word. Not just biology, but relationship, presence, love. He wanted that. Oh, how desperately he wanted that. He wanted Maya to light up when she saw him. He wanted her to beg him to stay longer, to visit more often. He wanted to be the grandfather who knew her favorite foods, her favorite stories, her dreams and fears. He wanted to kiss her forehead and have her giggle instead of tolerate. He wanted her to climb into his lap naturally, seeking comfort and affection. But wanting wasn't enough. He had to earn it. Time and consistency. Those were the currencies of a child's trust. He could bring all the gifts in the world, but what Maya needed was his presence, his reliability, his genuine interest in her life. As the visit drew to a close, he made promises. He would come again soon. He would be part of her life. He would prove that grandfathers don't disappear, that family bonds can be rebuilt even when broken. Maya's response was still cautious, still distant, but not hostile. She said goodbye politely. She accepted his hug without pulling away. She even waved as he left, a small gesture that filled him with irrational hope. Walking away from Huyen's house, the gift bag now empty, his heart was a complicated tangle of emotions. Grief for what he'd lost, regret for the time wasted, anger at the circumstances that had created this distance. But also, and this surprised him, hope. Small, fragile, but persistent hope. Maya didn't know him now, but she could. She would. He would make sure of it. Even if it took years, even if progress came in tiny increments, he would not give up on being her grandfather, in truth, not just in name. Maya's grandfather's story reminds us of one of family separation's cruelest consequences, when love is forgotten, not through malice, but through simple absence. A 2-year gap in a young child's life can erase relationships that should be unbreakable. Yet his determination to rebuild what was lost shows us that family bonds, though fragile, can be restored through patience, consistency, and unconditional love. This grandfather's heartbreak is shared by countless separated family members worldwide. Grandparents estranged from grandchildren, parents from children, siblings from each other. The pain of being looked at as a stranger by someone who should know you intimately is profound and deeply human. But his story also offers hope. Relationships can be rebuilt. Trust can be earned again. The love between family members, when nurtured with genuine care and presence, can overcome even years of distance. What would you do in this grandfather's position? How would you bridge the gap with a grandchild who doesn't remember you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to Life Single Review for more emotional stories from Vietnamese family life. Thank you for watching, and remember, family bonds are worth fighting for.